appropriations. We haven't received what we expected, but that is coming in January, so that's a quarterly kind of thing that hits us. And so it will bounce up. There's no doubt that we will make our annual, receive our annual allotment there of 700,000 something. Going down to expenditures, we've got 3 items to talk about. And basically all of these are what I call timing, where we may have just lump payments a few months of the year, and yet the budget is kind of divided by 12, so that in a given month we may be up and down. The key always is to make sure that when we look at our year-to-date, that we haven't exceeded the total approved budget. Now, we'll get more toward that around maybe March or April, when we start nearing the end of the year. So right now, we usually are pretty safe, but that's always just something to keep in your mind, to say, okay, we know we can't exceed our annual, and where are we up until then? And as long as we're under it, understanding that this isn't an exact science in terms of the budgeting is not trying to guess every month. It's just basically, as I said, monthly. So specifically, if you look at periodicals, you'll see that it looks like we are overspent in periodicals, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 down. But if you look at our total year, you can see we haven't spent the total year, and again, that was just how we make the payments. Number down, pretty much down near the bottom, we end up program and services and grants and donations. Just a little bit of a difference there. It's really, I don't really like to talk about anything that isn't 10% or more. And then underneath that, down a couple more, is staff development and travel. You'll see we got 11%. Here again, well underneath our annual number, and just a question of the timing of those months when that took place. So in summary, for the month of November, we are under control. If we look at December, we can then make the analysis up in revenues. Basically the same comments hold for the state aid appropriation, which again didn't hit in December, but is hitting in January. So that number will come back. And we look at expenses, we see now that periodicals are becoming more in line. We still are over, but again, in control. And the other 2 programs we discussed are now under the 10%, so there's no discussion necessary, so that all evens out. So that is my summary of our budget expenditures for the last 2 months, Mr. Chair.
Very good.
And that's my report.
Thank you, Dennis. Are there any questions? All right. We'll go on to unfinished business. Does anyone have any?
Pardon me? You skipped
Oh,
standing committees?
yes, I did. I'm sorry. Standing committees. Policy committee.
Policy committee right now, we have the addition of Nancy this month, so welcome Nancy to our committee. And we are in the process of continuing to work on the collection policy with the goal of having a draft of that available for the next meeting.
And then strategic committee is just being formed, so there's nothing on that.
Why don't you
I'll
announce
discuss
the
that.
why don't you announce the members?
I'm gonna discuss that under new business
Okay,
officially.
Go right ahead there.
But unfinished business, is there anyone knows of?
I'd like to ask a question. I can't remember the exact time. Diane Ingersoll, who's president of Friends, you probably know, but last year, the Friends gave $23,000 to the library for the purchase of a vehicle. We bought the vehicle, and then the hailstorm came and destroyed it. So it was totaled, and the insurance check went to the county. I'd like to know the status of the vehicle that the Friends paid for, and when that they can expect to receive it.
So the check came to us,
Right.
and we worked through county after some back and forth, who was supposed to help us. And not in a bad way, just, I was talking to one person I thought I was supposed to be talking to, and it turned out I was supposed to be talking to somebody else. And we next week, the week after.
And it will meet the requirements that you were looking for?
It does, yep, it's the same Chevy Traverse
Very good.
that y'all got.
Okay, very good, thank you.
You're welcome. I was gonna tell you that at the Friends meeting on Monday.
I'm
Oh, you're not
on
looking
that
at
committee.
That's right.
Time ran out.
Okay, new business, review committee appointments. Back on December 20th, I sent out an email, appointing the different policy committee, strategic committee people, but probably 3 of you weren't even signed up on the, library email system, so we'll go back over that very quickly. Policy committee, Dennis is chair, Susan Pining and Nancy Nicholson is on the policy committee. Strategic committee, Carol Herring is chair, Laura Milam and Terry Plum. Okay, amendment to bylaws, I'm gonna make a motion here, and if I get a second, then we can discuss it, if anybody wants to discuss it. I move to change the bylaws in Article 4, Section 5, public comment to read as follows. The board may allow public comment at the beginning of the meeting for people that want to address the board regarding items that are on the meeting's agenda. If allowed, the board will listen and not respond. The speaker shall have a 2-minute time limit. The board will hear no more than 2 speakers that are for and 2 opposed to any agenda item. There will be a maximum of 4 speakers at any board meeting. Those wishing to speak will sign the sheet with all required information. This will be provided by the secretary on a table at the entrance to the meeting room. Persons wishing to address the board regarding other library items should contact the library director not less than a week before the meeting with the topic for approval. They will have a 2-minute time limit. The person will be notified if approval was granted 48 hours before the meeting. Okay, do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion. Well, basically, just let me say, really, the only main verbiage difference here is, we went from 5 minutes down to 2 minutes.
I'd like to suggest you amend it to, I have no problem with the 2 minutes. People can discuss a lot in 2 minutes, if they're organized. And having people ramble on for 5 minutes, I think is a waste of time and it extends the meeting. But since we're reducing by 80% the amount of total time the public could speak, I would like to see us be more generous with the number of people who can speak. In other words, if we're now at 4, I would raise it to 8. They're only gonna be 2 minutes. They're really not gonna add any time to the meeting. And that number is, of course, debatable, but I do think that hearing more people is better. It don't have to be to the point. If they go over 2 minutes, I think we ought to use the gavel and shut them off. But, because we have to respect the efficiency of this meeting. But I do think we want more input, we want to encourage more public opinion rather than discourage it.
Okay, are you making a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion that we, limit, the only change in your amendment would be to, make it hearing 4 people on either side of the topic, rather than 2.
Okay, so to amend the motion, there has to be a second. Is there a second?
I'm the second.
Okay. All right, well, we need to vote.
I'd like to make another motion, another amendment.
Wait a minute, well, how many amendments can we have?
Infinite number.
Okay.
But I would just like to have make an amendment that we, rather than 2 and rather than 4, that we look at 3. So that would give us 6 speakers per topic maximum.
I'll go on then.
So we would have a total of 6 speakers, 2 minutes, per
3, 3, and 3.
3 and 3.
I do have one question, this is not part of the amendment, it's part of the discussion. The either or bothers me, that we're saying, okay, you can say either for or against something, but a lot of times people are sort of in the middle. I mean, they wanna express a thought that might not necessarily say, I'm totally against this or totally for it. Why do we have that division? And if, say, 3 people sign up to speak for an amendment, nobody wants to speak against it, do we add more people? So we get back to a total of 6?
No, not per bylaws, you've got, and if we go with the amendment that Dennis just said, it will be 3 for and 3 opposed.
But what you're saying, Terry, is that, that would stay, but what you're saying is some of those either for or against could be neutral.
Right,
Is what you're
right.
saying, but my observation is usually people don't come up to give us a neutral opinion.
Yeah.
They're coming up here to give us a for or against.
No passion, okay, all right.
Yeah, so
Fair enough.
I don't think that'll really happen.
So the amendment is amended to be, to change the number of people to speak on the issue, 3 for, 3 against.
Okay.
Opposed to the 2 that you, was the original change.
So is that considered a new motion?
Well, if we're gonna go with that, then you need to rescind your original motion.
Or rescind my original motion.
Okay, so now we're back to Dennis's
The amendment.
amendment to change it from, 2 people to 3 people, 3 people for and 3 people against or opposed, maximum per meeting. Is that what we're saying?
Correct.
For a total of 6.
And have you had a second on that? I'll second Dennis's amendment.
I second it, actually. I second.
You seconded?
I did.
Okay, Nancy already seconded. Okay, well, let's vote on the motion. So the motion reads this way. If allowed, the board will listen, because any, per Robert's rules, before we vote, I'm supposed to repeat the motion every time. And that hadn't been done in the past, but we were starting to learn that, so you might have to hear me talk whatever you want to, that's just the way Robert's rules are. Okay, so the motion as amended is on the floor in this way. If allowed, the board will listen and not respond. Well, we'll back up. The board may allow public comment and at the beginning of the meeting, people that want to address the board regarding items that are on the meeting's agenda. If allowed, the board will listen and not respond. The speaker shall have a 2-minute time limit. The board will hear no more than 3 speakers that are for and 3 opposed to any agenda item. There will be a maximum of 6 speakers at any board meeting. Those wishing to speak should sign the sheet with all required information. This will be provided by the secretary on the table at the entrance to the meeting room. Persons wishing to address the board regarding other library items should contact the library director not less than a week before the meeting with the topic for approval. They will have a 2-minute time limit. The person will be notified if approval was granted 48 hours before the meeting. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed,
Mr. Chairman, I see a potential issue in that we recognize in the final paragraph that people may address the board regarding other items, it says library items. I would think that the items are not on the agenda, not an agenda items. I mean, we don't want to encourage people to get there and give their theory of climate change. But if we recognize the fact that people may address the board on other library items, the statement in the previous paragraph will say there will be no more than a maximum of 4 speakers at any board meeting. The 2 are mutually exclusive. In other words, if we adopt the paragraph, the next to last paragraph, there will never be a time that someone could address another issue with us without violating the bylaw. Does that make sense?
I think but it says that the board will hear no more than 3 speakers that are for and 3, it will hear no more, it doesn't necessarily have to be 3. If you have someone that wants to come in with another item, can they take the place of one of those 6? And then cut back on the number for and for and against.
Terry, today would be an example. Nobody's really speaking on the items, but yet someone could come in and say, I'd like to talk about a new library location or something like that. So they would have been allowed time, but if we have a full agenda with people on a controversial issue, then we'll back off the general information to the next meeting. So we're just kind of controlling the.
Well, I just look at it with the actual bylaws say, you know, maybe we could reword that to indicate that maximum of 4 refers to speakers on agenda items.
So that was changed to 6.
Yeah, we got 6. We don't want more than 6 at any meeting. We've got our own business to take care of.
Well, that's kind of arbitrary. I mean, I don't have any ideas in mind of what people might want to talk about, but I think the public ought to have a sense that we're willing to listen to them. I mean, we've got an approval process in there that says if you want to speak to the board, you gotta contact the library director a week in advance, which is a long time, a week in advance, for approval, which assuming that the library director has the authority to give them approval to speak.
Right.
But how does that fit into the 4 speaker limit?
That doesn't fit in, because what if 12 people write in and wanna speak? Then you've got 18 people speaking, so maybe you can add a clause saying such that there are to be no more than 2 outside of controversial issues, that if they wanna come up and address something.
I think that the better approach would be to just allow, it sort of says, it's implied here that you contact the library director a week before the meeting, and it gives the library director the discretion whether to let that person be on the agenda or not. I mean, that's why they contact the library director, right?
That's just always been in your bylaws.
This is at the banner sheet.
The people who've been contacting you that have,
Can you think of an example?
Yeah, that verbiage has been there for.
well,
ever.
Dennis just cited me, somebody might wanna say, I think we need a new library in Clover. You need to allow those people opportunity.
Yeah, but they would have opportunity at this meeting because there's nobody speaking. So that's why you should, where we have, this is again, we first look at the agenda. If there's a controversial agenda item where we know the public wants to speak, we gear it to that. When we have another meeting that is no controversy, then we can pile in the other people who want to come and speak.
That's not in the Bible. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but basically, I think we ought to have rules that people can speak or not speak. I think that the discretion of whether someone should be allowed to speak to the board ought to be given to the chairman, working with the director, to between the 2 of them, decide this person has something significant to say, let's give them a spot on the agenda. And if there are too many people, they can say that. We can't do it this next meeting.
Well, basically, that's what it says, for them to get approval. And if it's approved by the director and the chairman, then they'll have 2 minutes time limit.
Well,
That's what it says.
it may be implied, but it's not stated.
Okay, well, if it's passed as is, I think it's pretty good. If we see in the future that it's causing some kind of problem,
Well,
we will certainly,
would you
revisit.
permit me to redress this in the next meeting and maybe come up with a wording that might address some of the things I'm talking about?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, that's all I need. And I do have a question. Why did we decide that there will be no public comment in this meeting?
That is our discretion to do that, and we have a lot on the agenda. And we can do that
Was that-
at other times if we like.
You say our, who decided it?
I work with the director to put the agenda together. That's the
All
chairman's
right.
responsibility.
Okay, all right.
All right.
May I ask another question? Disappointing. For the current bylaw, the 3rd paragraph says that
persons wishing to address the board regarding items pertaining to the library not yet on the proposed agenda should contact the library director or board chair. That's what it currently says.
Yeah.
Alright, and then the proposed just has, will contact the library director.
Correct. But the library director and the chairman work together to put the agenda together. So basically, if someone goes to Julie first, then she and I will work together to put the agenda together and decide if this, extra speaker is, is going to be, on the agenda.
That makes sense, because the library director is much easier to contact.
Okay.
You can always get to her, get the message, somebody in the library will get back with you.
Okay. Well, that clarifies everything.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Okay, let's move on to computer and internet policy discussion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We've already had Julie's, introduction to the need for us to review this policy and to, approve it. And in your packet of information is a, reworked computer and internet use policy, which has been approved by the policy committee. And the changes, are indicated on this piece of paper here. You can see that the additions are in red, and where we struck a few words, that is, in blue and struck. So I move that we accept the computer and internet use policy as indicated at this meeting.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have any discussion?
Yeah, I don't understand why we're striking the, endorses the American Library Association's Bill of Rights.
Okay. Well,
That
let's-
doesn't make any sense to me.
Let's visit that. Since you're new here, we had a motion that took place in October that read this way. In light of the state library director, Lisa Aiken, breaking ties with the American Library Association per email dated August 21st, 2023, I move that the York County Public Library System hereby disassociates itself from the American Library Association. That was passed. It would be good, Julie, if you could send that out, because, the new members don't even have that email that came from the state director, that would be very helpful.
If we check with the state director, is that, something they recommend? Isn't the ALA sort of derecognized authority on library procedures, and severing ties with them doesn't make any sense?
They are, but I think her letter will, help you understand why she made that break.
Yeah, the letter is very clear as to why the state library disassociated from the ALA, very clear. And once Julie gets that out, I think it will clear up any concerns with that.
And what would it take for the ALA to reestablish themselves in our good graces? Are we not cutting off our nose to spite our face with denying access to our staff for their expertise?
No, we're not. ALA has gone off the rails.
What's gonna replace them?
There's
All
other
the training
associ-
that they get?
There's other associations.
Are they up to our standards, or are they as good?
You know, we as a committee are gonna continue to pursue that, but the ALA has gone off the rails, and the state library has, acknowledged that and disassociated, therefore, we are following the direction of the state library.
But Terry, to be more direct, right now, what the American Library Association says about the Bill of Rights has nothing to do with this policy. And it just puts a big hook onto it, because then we're responsible for saying we endorse the Bill of Rights, and that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother day. it doesn't really belong in your computer and internet policy. So if you'll notice, it was just struck, the germane part of the paragraph, the sentence is still there. The idea was that we don't restrict access to any information, and, because of the origin, background, or views of the author. That is the germane part of it. Adding on that we endorse the Library Association Bill of Rights, which has 15 other things to it probably, has no meaning and no purpose in this policy. And no bearing on this policy.
Hold on.
Okay, so, we have a motion, we have a second, we have discussed it. Do we have need to do any more discussing? Carol? Dennis made the motion, Terry seconded it.
Right.
Okay, so, before we vote on it, I'm just going to modify this a little bit. But there again, the first paragraph, the only thing that changed is the word "and" was struck, and Wi-Fi, the word "and all other required laws" was added.
I'm sorry, I didn't have my copy in front of me. Repeat what you're saying?
First paragraph,
Uh-huh.
the word "and" was struck out and added to that sentence that says Wi-Fi and all other required laws, period.
Wi-Fi was already part of it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and then the second paragraph will read, in the second paragraph, endorses the American Library Association's Library Bill of Rights, was struck, and the words, those contributing to their creation was struck. So, now that paragraph reads, the library does not restrict access to any information because of the origin, background, or views of the author. All right, all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Looks good.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to talk about something on the, new business that I forgot.
Excuse me, we have an appointment with the auditor. Can we
Oh,
pull the
okay.
agenda? Yeah, I have to pull it up. May I pull it up? Did we continue with the agenda?
Yeah,
Or
let's
do you
go.
need me to explain?
If she needs to jump in here now, we'll do that. That's the way we do it.
She's in the waiting room.